had known my sister-in-law, Leah, for many years before we began to journey through the suburbs of Chicago trying to find a wedding dress for me. We bounced around from suburb to suburb, stopping at this store and that, which gave us a whole lot of time to actually just talk with one another. We were driving and shopping all day, talking about many, many things. But when our conversation turned to Daniel, her brother, she said, Daniel is a very sensitive person. Don't break his heart. I understood. I know that marriages can have very stormy and difficult times in them, times when people are hurt. But I also knew that I would never intentionally break Daniel's heart. But Leah kept on, and she said, you must promise me that you won't do it. Swear that you won't. And I said, I won't. Today we're going to hear a story where we find God's heart breaking. Something that may surprise you. God's heart can break. Listen with me to this story in Genesis chapter 32, beginning with the first verse. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered around Aaron and said to him, come, make gods for us, who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. Aaron said to them, take off the gold rings that are on the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. So all the people took off the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. He took the gold from them, formed it into a mold, and cast an image of a calf. And they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, tomorrow shall be a festival to the Lord. They rose early the next day and offered burnt offerings and brought sacrifices of well-being. And the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to revel. The Lord said to Moses, go down at once. Your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have acted perversely. They have been quick to turn aside from the way that I commanded them. They have cast for themselves an image of a calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. The Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone, so that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them. And of you, Moses, I will make a great nation. But Moses implored the Lord, his God, and said, oh, Lord, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was the evil intent that he brought them out to kill them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce wrath, change your mind, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, how you swore to them by your own self, saying to them, I will multiply your descendants like the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have promised I will give to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever. And the Lord changed his mind about the disaster that he planned to bring on his people. Can God's heart ever be broken? I know that's a kind of a strange image for most of us, but the prophet Jeremiah describes God's experience with the people in exile with these words: "Oh, that my head were a stream of water, and my eyes were a fountain of tears, so that I could weep day and night for the slain of my poor people, Israel." One day, God asked Moses to go up to the mountain. Moses was to go up to the mountain and receive God's covenant with the people, the 10 Commandments. Moses asked Aaron, his brother, to take care of the people while he was away. And he went up the mountain to meet with God. But he was there a very long time. And meanwhile, down in the valley, the people became frightened. They became anxious, terrified. Where is he? Where is Moses? Where is God? Actually, the people were afraid of God. Long ago, they had asked Moses to speak to God for them, because they had seen the fire and smoke on the top of that mountain when Moses went up there. They didn't want to talk to God directly. They wanted Moses to talk to God for them. So they were frightened of God too. And they were terrified because Moses wasn't there with them. And here they were, stuck in the middle of nowhere, not knowing where to go or what to do. And as the days wore on, it became more and more difficult for them. They just couldn't take it anymore. Out of their fear and desperation, they went to Aaron and they said, "Please, please make gods for us. Gods that we can look at, not wonder about. Gods that won't leave." Meanwhile, up in the mountain where Moses and God were, God noticed what was happening down there in the valley, and God was horrified and enraged. And God said to Moses, "Get away from me, because I want to be alone and let my anger burn so hot that it will consume these people." But Moses didn't go away. Moses stood right there with God. Moses actually started arguing with God. Moses said, "Well, you don't want to destroy these people, do you? I mean, after all, what will the Egyptians say? They'll look at this and they'll say to themselves, 'Well, he just brought these people out here to kill them. This God isn't any good. This God has evil intent.'" But then God countered to Moses and said, "Look, okay, we can start over together, you and I. We'll just wipe out those people down there, and we'll start all brand new. A whole brand new group of people, you and I. Let's do it." Moses wasn't interested in that. You see, Moses loved these people that were down there in the valley, and Moses had absolutely no interest in starting over. So finally, God relented, decided not to destroy the people, and so Moses went down into the valley again. And when he got there, he chastised the people. He punished some of them. He ground up the golden calf into gold dust, poured it into the water, and made all of the people drink it. And then he went back up the mountain again, and he had one more request of God. Moses said to God, "I will give my life if you will forgive those people. You can wipe my name out of the book of life in exchange for their forgiveness." But God wasn't going to do that. God reserved judgment. And meanwhile, down there in the valley, the people were very busy. They were judging Moses. They were so fed up with Moses, they called him "that man Moses." "That man Moses, we don't know where he is." They were so frustrated and angry at Moses And Moses even knew that too. He knew that when he said to God he wanted to keep those people. He knew that those people were angry at him and that they were complaining about him day and night. But still, Moses worked with God and begged for those people and said to God, you have to lead them out into the promised land. I can't do that alone. And it was such an amazing demand, and yet God met it. God appeared before those people from that moment on as a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, and led those people every step of the way onward for 40 years through the wilderness into the promised land. God had been very angry with the people because God had felt abandoned by them. The people had gone off with false gods. God was the one that had brought them out of the land with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. And yet here they were. First little bit of trouble. They're rejecting God. God was abandoned and God was angry at the people and God's heart was broken. But there was one person that didn't abandon God. It was Moses. And you notice Moses didn't abandon the people either. Moses had his hand around both God and the people, and he would not let go. Moses was standing in the breach between God and the people. That's what that man Moses did. So what would this look like today in our world? What would it look like if we had someone like a Moses? Well, that someone would first of all have to be bound to God. And all of us we're here. We are bound to God. We're worshiping God today. But are we bound to God's people the way Moses was? You see, that was the important thing. Moses was bound to all those people, even the ones that couldn't stand him. Would we bind ourselves to all of God's people that way? Would we pray for them each night? Would we go back to them and help them to heal their wounds? Would we even let their broken hearts break ours too? That's what Moses did. Would we be a Moses? Fall is a beautiful time of year. But it's a sad time too, don't you think? Because the light is beginning to get a little dimmer. The days are getting shorter. The darkness of the winter is starting to close in. And the mighty oak tree is very busy. There is one last thing the oak tree has to do before winter comes. And that is make as many of these as possible an acorn. There's no time now for the oak tree to say, oh, I want to put on some wonderful foliage, or I think we need some new branches. No. There are weeks of light left. Weeks. And the oak tree puts every last bit of energy into this little thing, this acorn, so that there can be more oak trees in the future. And the acorn, when it lands on the ground, it gets busy too. This woody-looking thing breaks open, and sprouts come down into the soil from the acorn, even before winter comes. And the acorn spends all of its energy, even its beautiful woody exterior, on giving that seed new life. Moses, he led the people. He went ahead of them all the way to the promised land, but he never went in himself. Moses gave his life so that they could go in. And those of us who've been around for a while could give our lives to those who are younger than we are, to persons who have a seed inside their acorn, but need our knowledge, or need our support, or need our help. You know, we could actually just give ourselves away to people who will bring God's future into this world, just like the oak tree gave itself away to the acorn before winter. That's what we can do. We can be a Moses. We can be the soil for the next generation of God's servants. Let us trust in the Lord. Let us give ourselves away.